Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with SS&C Blue Prism. Happy 2024 to everyone, and welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Today, I'm excited to have as my guest Bent Dalager, the Nordic Head of KPMG NewTech. Bent is based in Copenhagen, and he and I will be talking about his thoughts on how intelligent automation is changing and also how it is impacting the outsourcing industry around the world. Welcome, Bent. Why don't you tell us more about yourself?
That's right. I have a good deal of thoughts about the topics that we're going to discuss. And just to make sure that there's some understanding, KPMG is often connected directly with audits, which is not so strange since we are among the big four audit companies in the globe. But actually, what we're doing in KPMG NewTech is AI and AI-based transformations. And that's everything we do. So it's 100% job. And this is not a bunch of auditors. It's actually computer scientists. It's business school guys and girls. It's a mixed, diverse crowd, but they all have in common that they really are into AI and how to automate using AI tools. And by the way, I'm also sitting in the Global Emerging Tech group, the so-called Analyst Relation Group. So this means that when we are discussing, okay, where are we in terms of Gartner, Forrester, etc., and then I will have a talk with some of those guys, basically to talk about what is the direction that we have in KPMG and talk with our analyst relations about it, basically. And this is a topic that is very close to me. So I'm spending some time on doing educations as well at different business schools, Copenhagen Business School, but also INSEAD in France. There's another one.
You do have quite a few things going on. I read your profile, and I wonder how you have time in the day to tackle everything in your list there. And this whole area of AI-based transformation is really fascinating. So it's neat to hear that you're leading the charge on that in the Nordics for KPMG. So Ben, as a career consultant, how did you get into the intelligent automation space?
Yeah, essentially, I spent my years before even going to college or university, I was starting my own software company together with a very bright guy, actually a genius, essentially, a guy called Ole Asen. And what happened was that when we were going to study at university, I was taking computer science. And not only that, but I thought that psychology was my other choice, but I chose computer science and then went into the psychological way of doing the study. A lot of studies of philosophers, and then in the masters specializing into AI and cognitive science. So this was, I'm only saying 1,000 years back. So it was something that I really believed in. The neural networks was not only a thought at the time, but we were able to create a real neural network. So I was pretty sure that the world was right for this. They weren't, to be honest. So I did a lot of work in Accenture. I was working 25 years in Accenture. And as a part of that, about 3 years before I left, suddenly robotic cross automation began to rise. And I was at the time doing financial services. I was leading that on a Nordic level. There were a lot of different banks and insurance companies that we worked for. And what happened was that we were doing an outsourcing for an insurance company locally. And this was against the Indian pure plays, which was completely normal for us, and Accenture still is, I think. But what happened was that I got the message. We were not reaching the final, and I got the message, you were the only one not using robots. And I was like, what? Because I've always been very early with everything. I was preaching mobile banking in 2001, for instance, for a surprise audience. As you know, iPhone came in 2007, but actually Nokia they had actually developed something that you could use for a mobile bank. Anyhow, that has just been the story of my life. But in this case, I really didn't get it. And then I was like, hey, wait a minute, does this actually work? Because we have tried to get it to work for years. And yes, we have some people working in India with this. I was like, yeah, but we should do it for our clients directly. They were like, yeah, we don't know. We're doing outsourcing. And then I said, no, we're going to do this. And then I made a small group called Future Tech and Accenture. And I actually became the lead for RPA and AI in financial services in IALA, which is Europe, Africa, Latin America. But I think the thing was, this was early days. So when we started this, Blue Prism, and we asked them for a reference. And Blue Prism was the only player in Europe. And actually, you have automation anywhere, but they were mainly in US and in India. In Europe, it was Blue Prism or nothing. And Blue Prism at that time, they only had one reference, which was Coop Bank in Scotland. So it was not a lot to build on. But anyway, that business disturbs me. And I then started off doing a robotic automation process for banks and pension companies in the Nordics. So early out. And then I decided to leave Accenture basically to concentrate on only doing AI, because at the time it was a lot of different things on my plate. I was responsible for everything within financial services. And then rather do only AI and do it across industries. So that's what I've been doing now for more than 7 years. That has been quite I would say, a great journey. And especially now with GenAI coming along, this is super.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'd love to go there next, if you don't mind. You talked about the early days of AI and your work in neural networks and such. Now that we've rapidly progressed into the world of large language models and generative AI, how do you see the automation sector evolving now that Gen AI is here to stay?
Yeah, I think already before we have been working with this, as I mentioned, 7 years in KPMG, but actually starting before that, about 3-4 years in Accenture. This means I've been working with automation for 10, 11 years since it was a small baby, basically. And I think what I've seen is that even before GenAI, we have made a lot of, what can you call it, kind of, whether it's an epiphany, maybe that's too big of a word, but a thing where you say, hey, wait a minute, we basically have gotten this wrong. Because what we have done for years and years has been to have a process and then try to automate each of the steps of the process. And then if that didn't pan out well, we or the client was sort of saying, yeah, but that's because the process is not really well made. Let's do a lean on the process, and then we can do a lean process and then automate that one. But I think what we have realized is that's really not the way to get great gains out of automation. So there has to be another view. And I think that's the view that we are promoting now. And that's a view where you really are changing from having, you can say, that the humans and the human process, and then help from AI. And with AI, I also mean RPA. I mean, even back in the days, and when I was doing my studies in AI, the professor was writing on not on a whiteboard, by the way, it was on a blackboard. He was writing on a blackboard, GUFI. I said, but what is GUFI? Because he was defining AI.
Right.
He was writing GUFI on the top, and I was like, what is that? And he said, well, it means good old fashioned AI.
Exactly.
So it's a rule-based. And of course, when you can learn, a computer to play chess with rule-based, of course, chess is an intelligent game. And that's also a part of artificial intelligence. So I think what we have seen is that you need to move away from having the humans being helped by AI into a place where the AI is actually running, and then you have humans helping. And Gen AI is a major step forward, because what we have been doing so far has been to take any repetitive processes where we can explain, this is how you do it, look up in this manual, then you can do X, Y, Z. And we wanted to avoid, and I'm thinking outsourcing because that was your question, so I'm going back to that one. But we were basically saying, now you can think about a process that is very logical. You can explain it. You don't have to have a lot of language capacity in order to handle that process. It's not a multi-language process as such. it has a great level of repetitiveness. So it's the same thing you do over and over and over, like doing payments, like doing invoices, putting in sales orders, whatever. And then it's something that is done in blocks. So it's not just one time you do it, but a lot of people are doing it a lot of time. That's perfect for outsourcing, but that's also perfect for automation, even in the pre-GenAI era. And that's because it's processes that are, you can say, they are based on rules, they are based on logic. Now, with GenAI, we move to the next step, because the issue we have had so far is automation of processes or process steps that requires experience. So, this guy or this girl that knows, hey, oh, this is how we do this. Okay, but how do you know? Well, you learn from experience, or somebody will even say, I use my intuition or whatever. It depends on where you are. If this is a bank, they will not talk about intuition normally, but it's the same thing. It's basically based on a lot of experience. They know that this is the way it works. In a way, it's not any different from being great at any sports. How do you swing a tennis racket or play golf? That's the kind of stuff that has been difficult to deal with from an automation perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see generative AI taking us further, faster than in the last several years? There's been a lot of great innovation. There's been a lot of AI skills that have emerged. Gen AI would seem to be moving us faster than ever before. And I know there's a phrase that you like to use, radical automation. Is Gen AI positioning us for that, in your opinion?
Yeah, I would actually say this is something that is possible to do even without Gen AI.
Okay.
So, we have done lately some projects that might sort of get the eyebrows up, which are to go into previous outsourcing agreements where you have outsourced a unit to, let's say, India. And then we have taken all the people in that shared service agreement. For instance, we did one where they did order to cash, OTC. They had more than 40 people working with this, and they had a contract with an outsourcing provider. And we basically went in using a combination of different tools like RPA, some image, some scanning, and a little bit of coding as well. Then we were actually able to take everyone out, going from 41 to 0 people, and 0 people in the HQ. Because normally you would say, hey, if I'm backsourcing things, I have more people at home. No, that was not needed. And we have done that several times now. And I really would say that when I do my education there, I talked about being an external lecturer, for instance, at business schools, and for instance, at quality education. I'm saying, please, if somebody is saying, I want to do an outsourcing of any, let's say, a finance process or HR process, I think they should think twice, because most of this can be done completely automatic. And if there were any areas we couldn't do before, which was definitely the case, now with GenAI, it's even a broader net of stuff we can do. So think a lot about GenAI as a supplement and not really as a replacement for AI. Because actually what we see now is that there has been a lot of talk, and also I understand it because I'm excited as well about what GenAI can do. But some of the shortcomings, especially if you are in a regulated area, is that the ability to produce a specific outcome, to say, okay, you have a customer, the customer is asking about something, and what you want to do is to give a specific answer each time. That's not really the forte of GenAI, because as a language model, it's difficult to produce the same phrase again and again with a lot of different questions coming in. If you ask, let's say, GPT different questions about the same, it will also have different answers. And that can be okay. But what you want to do as a regulated company, you would actually like to be a little bit more precise in some cases. And in other cases, it's all fine, of course. But the ability to have this hybrid going is something that we are going to see, I'm sure.
Yeah. What sometimes I've heard referred to as digital insourcing, as opposed to the more traditional business process outsourcing. And It's interesting to hear that you see this as a trend and you're advising companies more and more in this space. Then what do you find drives these companies to seriously consider going that direction, using digital workers instead of outsourced human workers? Because this is bucking the trend that has been in place now for decades, the whole BPO outsourcing engine, and it's still a gazillion dollar industry, and most companies rely on it very
Yeah.
heavily. So, what's the trigger that you find gets them to really take it seriously and look at that as an option?
Yeah, because I was a part of it as well, selling BPO agreements for Accenture. So no doubt about that. And it's still there and it's still being considered by many and also done. I think let me start reversely by saying, why is this interesting? It's interesting because you take something that seems to be not at par with the competition. And maybe there's even some issues with management, whatever, maybe some issues with the employees. And then you're sort of
Mhm.
able to put this all away and have it done and controlled by somebody else with a fixed fee, more or less fixed. And the second thing is that what most outsourcing companies are doing is that they are also saying directly to the CFO, and by the way, you are getting the savings already now in year one. Sometimes even to the extent where they more or less are paying them a check. So that makes it very interesting. But why would you consider backsourcing then or digital insourcing?
Mhm.
That's because when you look at what happens with these outsourcing contracts, most of them just stays on for years and years. And although the different outsourcing companies are saying that we're going to automate, then at the same time, the business models for, I would say, more or less all of them is actually to do labor arbitrage.
Mhm.
So if you move the labor out of the equation, why would you even use them for anything? So there's a little bit of, do you really think that they're going to make themselves basically dispensable? Are you
Mhm.
sure that's what they're going to do? Yeah, that's what we intend to do. But that's fact, it's very rare that I see this happening. To be honest, I have not seen it happen so far.
Okay.
And I've been in the industry for quite a long time. Secondly, when you then look at what is it that we are able to do, back to the thoughts about a work process. So how
Mhm.
should a work process look like? It should not be like it is today, where you have humans that basically are making a process made out of human steps, and
Mhm.
then you have technology helping. No, you need to recreate the process so it's made for AI.
Right.
And, and who is best doing an AI process? Surprisingly, that's AI. So it doesn't really make sense to sort of do any kind of, yeah, let's move this somewhere else and let's then try to do some automation, because they will do
Mhm.
automation on top of a human process.
Right.
And they actually need to create AI processes instead.
Mhm.
And that could be done extremely well in the country that you're in. So, so I think the second point is future work is digital work. It's not human work. And by
Mm.
outsourcing, sort of stick it in and it's sort of into a piece of concrete. That's not what you want to do. So that's a second point on this,
Mhm.
why you would consider doing it. And the third
Mhm.
point is something that has been keeping people from doing classic outsourcing for years, and that is control. The fact that you have control and know-how about what you do. I
Mhm.
think that's something where we see that when you outsource a process, it often means that you lose competence. Within a few years, you actually don't really know what's going on and how this process is done. So
Right.
you're completely in the hands of the outsourcers, which of course is problematic. And also those processes are beginning to stiffen. So this
Mhm.
means that in a way that you don't notice, if you have your own, let's say, finance department, it gradually evolves a little bit. You don't really notice this, but
Mhm.
what you notice is that if you have done an outsource, then very often the process is a little bit stiff. So every time new stuff needs to happen, you actually need to make a change request and set up something and et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. While when you have it in your own control, it sort of happens. You know, you sort of,
Mhm.
yeah, they know that now this new regulation is coming on. Yes, we need to do this and blah, blah, blah. So it sort of develops more dynamically. So this
Mhm.
thing about having control of the competence, I think it's quite vital and something that you will gain by doing this, what you call digital insourcing, a nice phrase.
Mhm.
or back sourcing, as we currently are calling it.
Right. Yeah, that rationale makes a lot of sense. Ben, who are you typically making this case to? Is it usually the CFO or is it the head of IT? Obviously, when entire business processes get moved to an outsourcer, sometimes IT takes more of an active role in kind of managing the relationship and what have you. But where are you typically making those arguments that you just talked about?
Yeah, this is definitely a C-level discussion. So it has to be at that level. And very often it will be around a CFO or a COO
Okay.
that is looking into this and saying, hey, we need to do something here. We can actually get a saving, which is interesting in a way. The first ones that have been doing this, they have been in the telco industry. And the telco industry was the first industry to really do outsourcing. So they were before the financial industry.
Right.
And it's interesting to see that they are the first ones then also to move things back. My guess is that you will see banks beginning to do the same because it simply is a cost saving. And I simply forgot that one. Number 4, yes, it's a cost saving, but of course, it's not a free ticket. So when you do the outsourcing, it's like, okay, you almost get money immediately. When you do a
Right.
digital insourcing, it actually has a cost to do that. But the good thing is that the return on investment, the time is not
Yeah.
that long. And
Hmm.
then you get into a completely different scale of cost. What you have seen for people outsourcing, let's say that could be to India, it could be to in Europe, it could be to Poland, Baltics, etc. It could be to Mexico, Brazil, and the States. What you have seen is that the price and the cost of those outsourcings actually was built on labor arbitrage, but certainly the wages in these countries are much, much higher in growth than the normal country. So if you are from the US, the price is going far higher up per hour than you used to.
Hmm.
So suddenly you're
Sure.
beginning to have an issue. This was supposed to be a cost saving. The cost saving is taken. And then they look into this and say, hey, what's going on with our outsourcing costs? They seem to rise like this. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what we should do about it. And it's not necessarily outsourcing. It's also just captive centers. You have made your own captive,
Yep.
and then you have established this. And then you again see the salaries rise. The salaries are not rising for robots, actually the opposite. And then you can say, yeah, there's something about licenses going up. Yes, but overall, in total, you are on a game where it gets less and less expensive to get a piece of digital work done
Hmm.
and more expensive to do a manual piece of work done. So there's a big cost saving here.
How, in your opinion, can companies ensure a smooth transition when moving from a traditional outsourcing model to a digital worker based insourcing model?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to take a look at what they have been outsourcing,
Hmm.
and essentially break it a little bit up. Because the nice thing about most of this is that this is not about changing the system. This is not about saying now we need a new SAP system or a new version of SAP to get this done, or Microsoft or new Salesforce. Everything is still as it is. So what we're doing is only on the surface of these systems.
Hmm.
So the one that operates the systems are changing from people to AI in different shapes and forms. And what is then done is that you are sort of cutting this up a little bit and saying, okay, what could be a good thing to move? Because the workers that are working could still be working on whatever. And then you can sort of take a piece out. Let's say this example with OTC out of the finance process, and then maybe only a part of that initially, and then begin to do it. But it should not be too narrow, because it's very important that you are, instead of thinking task-based, as I talked about before, that's the wrong way of automation, because you create new issues between the tasks. You need to look at this from a full process perspective. So it shouldn't be too narrow either, but some narrowness, and then you can begin to run it. Another point that is important is that you need to have an orchestration going on. So there should be basically a tech-enabled orchestrator. Normally, that would be a kind of a workflow package.
Mm-hmm.
that will then ensure that both the human and the AI processes are all orchestrated together.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the issues you can get if you sort of try to do too much with these tasks. Then you suddenly are getting into a problem with robots waiting for humans or human waiting for robots.
Right.
And when I say robots, I mean in a broad sense, it's also machine learning. It could also be Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say to get into a process, it would be look at the entire scope, break it into chunks. The good thing is you don't need to change any underlying systems, and then gradually doing the move. And then it's a little bit up to the risk appetite of the company, how quickly you want to do things. But in most cases, I would say that you can do a backsourcing in something like maybe 18 months, something
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
So do you believe outsourcing as an industry will be changed forever based on what's happening with
Yeah.
automation?
Yeah. I think it will. I think it's important to note that outsourcing also could be done for other reasons than labor arbitrage. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes using it simply because you don't have access to people. So you might go to another country simply to get that access.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, it's a different game. And
Mm-hmm.
especially if the processes are basically experience based.
Mm-hmm.
And an example of that is IT application outsourcing. So development of IT software, that's not a routine thing to do. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that you need experience to do. And what you see is that's not a business process outsourcing, but that's IT outsourcing. And
Right.
that's a little bit of a different game because there you both have the experience part, but you also have this thing about getting access to talent. But
Mm-hmm.
the classic BPO, finance outsourcing, classic BPO, HR outsourcing, for instance, or order management outsourcing, and customer service, by the way, we talk
Mm-hmm.
about GenAI. Customer service outsourcing, again, you should have a good argument to do it. And you should also now have good arguments to keep on doing it.
Right. I saw one analyst report that projected a CAGR growth rate of just over 9% through the remainder of this decade for business process outsourcing.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a little bit of an outdated view or?
What I'm saying is where things are heading.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that we can see that KPMG NewTech is really, on the front end here. We are on the edge of the new and we are signaling what is going to come. I think most companies don't know this. They have not seen automation really work to this extent. They have not seen automation percentages that has been large and
Mm-hmm.
especially not large enough to basically close down shared service centers. But that's what
Mm.
we're able to do when we do this creation. So in KPMG NewTech, we have created a new way of looking at processes to do full automation or radical automation,
Mm-hmm.
which is called a new practice.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to separate this from best practice because best
Yeah.
practice today is still to do gradual improvement, look at the processes, use lean, trying to find places where they are spending time, where they shouldn't spend
Mhm.
time and take that out. But in an era of AI, it doesn't really make sense because why would you take work out
Mhm.
when work for a digital worker, then extra work is basically for free. So why would you take it out? Actually, what I would do instead is maybe to move more work in. I've done a lot of lean at myself in my past as well in relation to system implementations. And
Mhm.
what you try to do is you try to move work away, but what you do in reality is you create more processes. Because immediately
Mhm.
when you get to a person and you ask, do you really need to do this? And the person is saying, yeah, I need to do this. And then you sort of try to question and say, are you really sure? And then, yeah, well, actually, if this is outside the US, I don't need to do this. Oh, fine.
Mhm.
And then I'm happy as a lean consultant. But what I have done is I've created two processes. One where it's
Mhm.
always done because it's in the US and one where it's not done because it's outside the US. And this way we have made it very complicated just because we are not able to fathom complicated stuff as humans. And secondly, because work is incrementally expensive. So if we can just get some work away, we save a lot of cost. But
Right.
it can actually be a hard job for AI to do some of the stuff we're doing. Much easier just to get it done. Just do
Yeah.
100%.
Sure. Ben, you're the third person from the Nordic region that I've talked to recently on the podcast. The other two were actually customers. And it just seems to me that there's a lot of very innovative things happening in your neck of the woods. What's your perspective on that? Just what you see happening in the Nordics versus other regions of
It's,
the world.
I think it's almost an issue because I think when I started in consulting way back when, it was always looking to the US, looking to other countries to find what was good examples that we could sort of take to Nordics. But what has happened is that the Nordics has digitalized a lot, so much so that if you take a country like Denmark, and they have sort of been thrown, if you will, as the number one digital country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a report coming out here, I think last week, that was saying, yeah, it's not totally sure because it looks like Finland has surpassed Denmark now, and then Norway is coming on strong, and then you have Estonia, which is a neighbor country to Finland.
Mm-hmm.
And then they question whether they are more digitalized. But if you think about all these names, they are all from the same region. So what's going on is that the countries, from a government perspective, has become extremely, extremely digital. So you're not able to, cash, for instance, is not possible to use with public sector. You cannot make a check. Checks was basically forbidden. I think it was like 5 years back. There was a law that was saying now you are not allowed to use checks anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not allowed to send any mail. I mean, mail has to be digital. It's just crazy. I mean, you think about it, and this means that you have a system where you are able to, not only able, but you almost have to make digital solutions. And I think that's why we see this almost firework of sort of super digital solutions coming out now from the Nordics.
Well, speaking of very advanced type solutions, as the Nordic head of KPMG NewTech, I'm sure quantum computing is another hot topic for you and your team. There's been a lot of visibility around quantum recently. I think IBM and Google and others have been saying that at least by the end of the decade, this should be something that most companies are taking advantage of. But what are your thoughts on that area? If you don't mind me taking a hard pivot away from intelligent automation.
No problem at all. No problem at all. 4 years back, a little bit more than 4 years back, KPMG NewTech was beginning to get involved in quantum computing. And this was on the background of quantum communication, which is the ability to have non-hackable information going from A to B using something called quantum key distribution. So this is one key area because when the quantum computers are going to be sufficiently able, they will be able to crack all the existing codes that we have for encryption. And when I say all the ones that we normally use, which is about 50% of encryption, that is for mobile phones, for your PC, etc. And they will just walk right in. You don't even know that you're being hacked. So that's one thing. And Joe Biden was making this decree, I think last year in December, about all the large institutions in the US, they needed to have a plan for how they could avoid being exposed to quantum. So that's going on as we speak. What also happened was we were looking into the quantum computers, how able were they? And they're getting more and more able. Now you will see the next version coming out. I think it's Condor by IBM here in December with more than 1,000 qubits. Doesn't seem much, but remember it's to the power of. So they put more than 500 extra qubits in. And this means it's 2 to the power of 500. That's a pretty high number. The question is, can we use it now? Is it useful now? And I would say yes, to some degree. The classic quantum gate-based computer can be used to some degree for some specific purposes, and especially for preparing yourself. What is also the case is that they have been able to simulate a quantum computer, not the classic one, but something called quantum linear, which is a quantum computer that only can do optimization. That's something that both Microsoft and Fujitsu has been able to simulate. And this means that you now are able to use the same quantum mathematics that you use on a quantum computer, also on a quantum inspired computer.
Right.
And that's really a breakthrough. This means that as we speak now, Brett, you are able to use better mathematics and use quantum mathematics to solve problems that is not solved to this day. And by the way, will not be solved with quantum anyway, but at least be a lot better solved. So things like, for instance, route planning. we can now do route plannings that are at least 10%, if not 20% better than anything a logistics department or company is doing. We can now do a grid optimization of mass in a network that is again between 10 and maybe 20% better than anything done right now. So it's really already beginning to rock the boat. But it's a little bit like you talked about before with the CAGR of outsourcing. This is not known. So most companies are not really into this yet. They're not aware that this can happen. So we're on the forefront of that development. But right now it's real. Using quantum computing is something that we need to look at immediately. When it comes to quantum communication and quantum crypto, definitely also, and especially if you have data that has longevity. So let's say you have a pension company, you have some health data, they can be hacked. What we are saying is we think it's going to be 2030, 2032. So if anyone has data that has a longevity longer than that, let's move into it now. Your data can be stolen easily.
Yeah.
At this moment, it doesn't help that they have stolen your data because they can't read them. But that's the principle right now for some hackers. That is what they call steal now, hack later.
Yeah, I agree with all your thoughts there. I don't think we completely can even understand the potential breadth of use cases that quantum will allow companies to tackle. I had one of the leaders of quantum for Fujitsu, who you mentioned. I had him on the podcast, and it was remarkable just to hear his thoughts on where the most immediate impacts can be felt in areas like life sciences and drug discovery and achieving things in days or months that would take years to accomplish. And so it'll be fascinating, but you're very right. There's the other side of it, which we have to think about in terms of how are we going to make sure that our data is secure and our passwords and everything that we've encrypted and felt good about before, how we continue to keep that stuff protected. Well, Bent, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I love your perspective on how companies can insource processes versus the default position of using a BPO model. You are definitely leading the charge on that in the Nordics and in Europe. And I'm sure KPMG will play a big role in advancing that globally. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I wish you the best.
Thank you for having me, Brad. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.